James and I wanted to take this time to show you guys the new functionality that we have around load locking within the TMS. For those of you who don't know, we have load locking functionality that allows a user to lock a load down to allow themselves to be able to quote, tender, and assign a carrier to a load without another user hopping in and stealing that load from them, which is great for our customers who live in a competitive environment within their own organizations. We've added a few features that a lot of our customers have been clamoring for, and James and I are going to take the time to go through what those new features are. So jumping in, we tried to mimic a lot of the functionality that we have in the look from our previous load locking tool on the left side here. So an unlocked load is still going to be yellow. When you own the lock, it's still going to be green. And if someone else owns that lock, it's going to be red now. So you can see what this looks like. It's an unlocked load. Pretty basic functionality still. When you lock that load, it turns green. And then we've added the new renew lock and release lock functionality here. Something big that a lot of our consumers have been asking for is this new queue functionality as well. So the queue allows someone who is not owning that load lock to jump in, and they'll be next in line to get the load lock when the current load locking holder runs out of time or releases their load lock. So you can see on load L13 here, we actually have two people in the queue. That first user is always going to be the user who owns the lock. And then from there, you can see the additional people who are within that queue. Something else that we've added is we've added the ability to put a cap on the number of renews that a user has within the system here. We had customers who wanted to see that so that their users couldn't automatically renew that load lock as many times as they want. So I'm allowing this person to renew the load lock once here. And once I get that, you see that time jumps back up to that 45-minute mark, which most of you guys won't have that long of a mark. I just wanted to show it for our purposes here. And then if I try and renew that lock again, you'll see they get this error message that they've renewed too many times and they can no longer renew that load lock here. And then they have the ability to release the lock. So once that user releases the lock, it moves down in the queue here and it moves on to user, who is the next person within that queue. So all of that functionality is pretty basic for a non-load locking administrator. They can basically steal or lock the load for themselves. They can join the queue. If they own the lock, they can release the lock or they can renew the lock themselves. As a load locking administrator, we do give you a few more permissions, including seeing that load locking manager that James is going to show to you guys. And then on the individual load pages, they have additional abilities that they have as the load locking administrator that they can utilize for themselves. So we're going to jump in here. We can see the lock was passed here on L13. I'm going to jump back into a load here. Second user has L14 here. So you can see as a non-owner of the load lock, they do have the ability still to join the queue. And then they also have the ability to release the lock from that user. So if I were to join the queue, I can also release the lock to move on to the next person. So they kind of have that override privilege in case someone might be abusing that load lock. That load locking administrator can come in and they can say, hey, I'm going to release that lock to the next user within the queue. And then once I drop down that queue, we also have this pass lock functionality as well that's delegated to those load locking administrators. So they can jump into a load and say you have someone who might be abusing it. They might have, stolen the load lock somehow from another user. A load locking administrator could come in here and say, hey, I need to pass this lock to the next user because the second user might be away from their desk. Whatever the reasoning might be, they have the ability to hop in here and they can move that queue forward so that the process keeps on flowing for you guys as companies as well. So if I pass that lock to user, they now own that lock, and you can see that user owns the lock now. That's all the new functionality that we have within the load lock on the load page. I will pass it off to James now so he can show you the new cool functionality that we've added with the load lock manager tool within our system. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Scott. So I'm here to talk about the Load Lock Manager LWC. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you what we're working with. First, let's talk about the filters up here. So these filters are going to be useful if you're dealing with many load locks. You could filter by the customer who's on the load, carriers who are assigned to it, sales statuses, load statuses, the ship date, and the delivery date. Along with those, we have lookup fields for the load name itself and for the user it was locked by. So something to note is that you can actually use these filters concurrently. So you could have multiple of them and it will show you any load lock that applies to. We think this is going to be useful for people who are dealing with many different load locks across many different customers, carriers, statuses, what have you. So let's take a look at some of these actions. You'll notice that here in the load lock columns, we have the unlock, pass lock, and queue action. You'll notice that queue is grayed out, but we will get to that later. First, let's take a look at these banner actions. Unlock and pass lock are here, just like they are down here. The idea here is that these are for when you want to apply these actions to multiple load locks. So if you select the Boolean for one or multiple load locks down here, this now becomes actionable. So we'll go ahead and select pass lock. And that brings up the pass lock modal. Here, you can go ahead and pass the lock over to any user you'd like, all in one place. And this updates in real time to show you that it is now locked by second user and when that lock ends. Worth mentioning is that the pass lock modal, when accessed here, is the same exact modal. It will only apply to the one load record that you're selecting the action for, as opposed to the one in the banner, which can apply to multiple load records. From here, you could also unlock loads where you just select it and the load lock is gone now. Now let's take a look at what the queue looks like. So we're going to go back to the load page. You'll see that the queue action is now actionable. And when you select it, it opens up a queue at the bottom for you to see. It shows the usernames, the order of which they are in the queue, and when they join the queue. And you can also pass locks here as well. And that's it. So to sum it up, this is an administrative tool that we built with the intention of having a one-stop shop for administrators to enact administrative duties on any load locks they might be dealing with. You can filter, pass, unlock, join, and view queues, and that's it.